All right, here we go. All right, so we got a question from one of our listeners here, and we thought I'm gonna get Scott's and Caleb's opinions on this, but why not go to one of the experts here, the expert, and that is Collins Illich from Sawgrass Rods. Collins, glad you could join us, man, for this one particular question, going right to the source. So this is what I got, and this is where we're going to start with you. Quote: with so many new rod makers, I'm wondering if y'all can discuss what separates them in quality, and if they come from the same blanks. Is there really much difference other than artistic craftsmanship? And then he said he enjoys the show. So let's start right there. In terms of, all kinds of rods are out there. You guys, obviously, that's what I throw. That's what Scott throws. And man, by the way, I really love that stuff that I've been throwing lately. It's been fantastic. But let's start right there. High quality rods. There's no reason to say anything bad about another rod maker, but what separates them?
So the first way to unwrap this would be you're talking about domestically produced product versus import product, and that's not necessarily to disparage import product, because there are really, really good import rods out there now, but the quality control, the consistency, the ability to talk to someone like me, like Scott, on the phone and manage it, that changes the game relative to what you can produce in the end. Our production capacity is, we intentionally limit it. We don't want to scale beyond where we are, because we're constantly tweaking, constantly refining. And if you get too big, so this is the advantage. I know everybody sees a rod company pop up every new fishing show. There's 3 new rod companies. Well, they're probably very good, and they're probably willing to listen in a way that a much larger, more established rod company can't or won't. Outside of that, relative to price and performance, it's pretty easy to do your own research and figure out if you're buying a brand, if you're buying a marketing piece, or if you're buying a quality instrument. I think fishing rods should be like when a surgeon picks up a surgical instrument, and I want it to fit in my hand, and I want it to be like an extension of my body. You're really only compelled to answer to yourself with how you fish. It's not like we're fishermen, we're having fun, we're going out. So no one should disparage anyone's product or whatever anyone else chooses to fish, because they're just out there to have a good time.
Yeah.
But we had a guy, for instance, come in last Saturday, had dinner at my house, met me at the warehouse the next morning, and we spent 6 hours because he liked what we built, but he wanted to tweak it. And we made him a complete 16 rod custom set.
Oh my gosh.
Yep, Thursday. So Sunday to Thursday, we built 16 rods exactly to his specs.
Yeah, you can't do that anywhere.
No, you can't. And, outside of that, relative to price and performance, if you see a Fuji Torzite, an REC recoil or Cerakoil guide on it, you're paying for a component. If you see an unbranded guide on there and they're not telling you exactly what the insert is, you're paying for a lot of marketing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, he specifically mentioned blanks, and there are other components as well, as you mentioned. There's a lot of quality ones, but you guys separate yourselves on that too, and maybe our listeners need to know that.
Yeah, well, so if I can add a little bit of anecdotal information to that, country of origin on a fishing rod follows the blank. So you could make a blank in the U.S., export it to China, bring that in, that's a made in U.S. rod. You could buy a Chinese blank, finish it here, that's a made in China product. That's just side note. But we use Norfolk composite blanks. A lot of people do. We have a few exclusives because I have a unique relationship with Gary Loomis. I worked under him. My daughter's named Susan, his wife's named Susan. You can connect the dots as to how close we are. But there are a few domestic blank makers that are, and they're all very good. Anyone making blanks here is very, very good. And there are a lot of good blanks coming out of Asia now. And I've seen some good ones that came out of Central America recently. But what I would say, the further you get from Norfolk composite blanks, and I have no dog in the Norfolk composite fight, the less consistent. So if you buy a 7.3 medium light rod or blank, or rod built on that blank, I would say consistently it's going to be, there'll be more anomalies in it as you get away from those finer, higher end blank manufacturers.
Now, let's put a bow on this thing here with regard to where you guys make them, how people make them when they go to a store and they pick up a Sawgrass, or they go to the website, or they call you, which your number, by the way, they call you. They literally call you when they're wanting a rod. But let's say they're comparing and contrasting in terms of how it was made. What should they be looking for? Let's help our listeners here.
It's a lot of subtlety, so it's not going to be that obvious. But one of the things that I look for when I go to a lot of tackle shops and just walk around and look, and I observe people. The first thing that jumps out to me when I'm looking at a massive, row of rods is the epoxy on the thread, and like heavy epoxy. Believe it or not, dramatically changes the way a rod performs because it's a lot of weight out towards the tip of the rod, and the tip is where you're getting both casting performance, casting accuracy, or casting distance, casting accuracy, and sensitivity out of. The butt is really just to fight the fish. So if you mess up that tip, really no matter how the rod's built, it's not going to perform very well. So I look for really thin epoxy. A lot of, we'll say, I don't want to say less expensive, but a lot of quick build product relative to fishing rods, they use like one big, heavy, fast curing epoxy coat. That's what you see that yellows over time, but also it doesn't look very good. And that's where you have a bunch of extra weight. If you really want to get into the nuance of it, I always look at the gap between the foot of the guide and the blank. And if it hasn't bled over and filled that void, you're going to have a failure because water's going to go in under that void and rot it from the inside, and it's going to fall apart. So it's really the fit and finish that I would look at first. And a good builder, whether it's us, whether it's an American-made product, or whether it's some of the really nice import rods that are coming in, it's going to be very, very obvious when you start comparing. Okay, well, this is a rod that I'm proud to fish, that I've been good. It's been good to me over the years. Man, the cork has no filler in it, or I like this grip material, and it's all tight. The reel seat's not wobbling. It's really quite easy once you start looking at the details. Man, I would say one more thing, go ahead, if you don't mind. And I would never buy a painted blank. Period. Okay. When you paint, there's two primary ways blanks are painted, and depending on which one, you lose between 9 and 16% of blank performance by applying paint to it. That's how important weight is relative to a finished rod product. So I would always look for a naked carbon fiber blank.
Dude, this is awesome. This is why we wanted to go straight to the source here. Some of that stuff I had known. I really hadn't even thought about painted blanks, and obviously I had seen the epoxy stuff, but that's exactly what our listeners were looking for. All right, so I've got a couple of rods right here that I haven't yet taken to my place down in Aransas, some Sawgrass. They're fantastic. I highly recommend them, but tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you and how they can get their hands on one of these.
Yeah, so essentially our business model is direct to consumer. And we offer a 100% refund return rate, no problem. And we'll provide the return label. That said, we've had 2 rods returned ever since I guess 3 years of inception. But sawgrassfishingrods.com, and then call me on my cell phone 469-233-2356. And if you just want to talk rods, that's all I do. So
dude,
call me all the time.
This is not the last time we're going to bug you with a rod question. I'm sure there's going to be some more coming up after people hear this.
Well,
much appreciated.
Next time, I apologize.
Yeah. By the way, that background noise is, we're recording this in the morning, and I saw beer in your hand, and I hear some. I see that you're in a bar, so you're one of us, man. You're one of us.
Thank you.
All right, appreciate it.
Take care.